Good morning, everyone. My name is Jenny, and welcome to today's Introduction to EMAR webinar. I'm joined by Ros today, and she'll be leading this event, and I'll be facilitating. Just before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping things that we want to cover. So we do ask that you keep your cameras and your microphones off during the event. We will be using Slido, and I'll be sharing that QR code with you in the next slide. The event will be recorded, so if you miss anything, there will be an opportunity to refer back to the recording and the slides, and this will be made available on the REC portal. And there'll also be opportunities for a Q&A, so if you have questions at any point, you can either raise your hand in Teams or you can add it to Slido. So this is the Slido QR code, and I'll pop a link in the chat as well. Just while everyone signs into that, I think I'm going to share the agenda with you. So very short agenda today. What is EMAR, demonstration and Q&A, but there will be opportunities for Q&A throughout. So I think I'll hand over to Ros.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. So as Jenny's explained, it's opportunities for questions throughout. So don't feel like you need to wait. If you want to dive into anything while we're demoing the tool on screen, just ask your question out loud, or if you'd rather, you can pop it into Slido and Jenny will read it for you. So let's kick off with a very brief intro to what is the EMAR. So the EMAR, it stands for Energy Market Architecture Repository, and it's essentially the home of the digital REC. So it contains the retail energy code schedules in a digitized format, and it contains the REC Data Specification. In terms of the evolution of EMAR, when REC first went live, what we had was an off-the-shelf tool provided by IBM, which is called IBM Jazz. And this is the original version of the digitalized code schedules and the data schedules. It does have a lot of functionality, but we're getting a lot of feedback saying it's too complex, it doesn't look very pretty, and because it's an off-the-shelf IBM Jazz tool, there's very limited amount that we could do to address those concerns within that tool. So what we now have is a second system we call the Digital Navigator that's completely bespoke, so we can react very quickly to feedback, and we've created what's intended to be a simplified version of the code schedules and the data specification in that tool. So it doesn't have the same level of functionality, but it is designed to be much easier and more user-friendly to use. So what I'm going to do in this event is mostly focus on Digital Navigator, and then share with you a couple of extra things you can do within IBM Jazz that currently we don't have functionality to do in Digital Navigator. But over time, we are increasingly shifting things into Digital Navigator so that it can give everyone what they want from the code in a nice, simple format. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. So if you give me a second to get on board. Okay, so are you able to see this? Perfect. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's a yes. So here we are on the REC portal. So step one to accessing the EMAR is just to go to the column here on the left-hand side and click on EMAR, Digital REC and Data Specification. And that will take you over into the Digital Navigator here. So in terms of the Digital Navigator, what we have is a series of tabs along the top. So we go from schedules here all the way across to Erin over here. You can go back to the REC portal here. You can head over to IBM Jazz. There's an opportunity to provide feedback. All feedback's very welcome. We're always looking to improve this system. So anything you tell us will feed into that improvement process. And if you needed some support, you can also reach out to the REC service desk here. In terms of the first tab, schedules, what we have is effectively a series of buckets where we've grouped the code schedules into the topics that they cover. So, for example, if you're interested in metering, you could just look at the metering schedules here, or you can have all of the schedules in a big long list if that's your preferred view. And then you can access any schedule you like. So let's pick schedule 12, data access. And what this does is loads it onto screen. Let's give it a second for it to spin. There we go. So here is the data access schedule. What we have is, this is version 3.10.0. You can click here and look at previous versions if you want to load a historic one. You can download in Word format if you want a Word version of the schedule. You can see we're currently on version 3.2, December 2023. So this is the REC version up here. This is the schedule version down here. And you can see the reason for release. Then you've got within the schedule itself, the clauses. You can click on anything that's underlined. So it'll take you to example where it references a schedule, it'll take you to that schedule, or if it's a definition, it will give you the meaning of that definition. You can navigate down the side here to paragraphs or sections that you'd like to move down to. I'll just load those. So that's the schedule view. So hopefully it's nice, clean, easy to navigate and has the information that you're looking for. But if you did need to search, if we head back to our schedules tab, we've got a search field here. So I'm going to type, let's say, code manager. If I type there, then it will bring up every instance of code manager and tell you where those instances occur within the schedules. There we are. So you can see all the instances, you can see the documents that appear in the clauses, and then you can click on this to load that clause. You can also filter. So if I just wanted the instances that were in, say, let's pick one that's got code manager, switching service management, it will, you have to click search, it will then filter it again, but only return, oh, there we go, I've picked one that doesn't have code manager. Look at it. Let's go main body. Oh, there we go, main body. So I'll return all the instances in main body. So that's the schedules tab. So essentially it contains the legal text and gives you the ability to search through those schedules for what you're interested in. I'm just going to pause there. Has anybody got anything they use the schedules for, or areas they struggle with that they'd like me to drill into there? Okay, in that case, I will move on to the data specification. So on the data specification tab, again, we have the grouping, so these buckets here. So you can look at individual sections, or you can press all and have a big long list. In terms of the items, so there's lots of different items on the data specification. So some of them are documents, others are like PDFs, others are spreadsheets. We've got some databases. You've got a BPAC format database or an HTML format. So those are machine readable. So you can download those and then upload them into your systems and essentially automatically read the data specification through those. If you click on them, if it's, for example, this is a PDF, it's opening in a new tab. This is the standards definition document that tells you all about the rules behind the data spec. We do run separate data spec training. So if you did want to know a lot more about the data spec, you can come to our next data specification training. I'm not going to go into too much detail on what all these things mean in this tour of the EMAR system. But if you did have any questions, do speak out. So what we have is you can access all the data specification items, or you can search. So you can type a search term here, or if you click on this, it will load, and it'll give you a complete list of all the market messages, or you can click on scenario variants. So scenario variants are new to REC, and they are essentially, it's the market message with the source and the target shown. So for example, the DO1 has 2 scenario variants because it's got 2 different instances where it can be sent. It can be sent from a distributor to a half-hourly data collector, or from an electricity supplier to the electricity MEM. Or you can search the data items. So what I'm going to do is go back to market messages, and let's search for that D01. And you can use the REC market message identifier, or what we call the local reference. So that's the individual references that existed pre-REC. So if I click search here, we've got the D1. We can click on that. And here we have the details for this market message. So it tells you a bit about the message in the description and the notes. It lists all of the data items that it appears in. You've got a list of the scenario variants. So it's the same message with the sender and the source. These messages can vary, so you can have different formats. Well, the message is largely the same, but the content might be different slightly depending on the scenario variant. So we pick one and open it. And then you've got the format here. You can see the owner. So this isn't a REC-owned market message. This is a balancing settlement code company one there. So if you did want to make a change to a market message or a data item, you can look up in here which code owns that item, and then you can raise a change through that owner. So it's this one, we host it on the REC systems, but we're not able to change it. It has to go through the formal BSC change process. Then you've got the details of the market message here. And again, we do have data specification training. So if you wanted to know how this table here translates into creating messages that are capable of being machine read, we go into a bit more detail on that in that training. But essentially, you've got various groupings, the data items that sit within those groupings, and then some rules, for example, 1 to many here. So you can have as many metering points for investigation in this message as you like. Now, if I head back to the search, there's just one other bit I was going to show you. You've got, you can also filter by source as well and recipient. So if you are, for example, a non-half-hourly data collector and you wanted to see which messages your organisation can send, that's list here. So you've got mostly DFlows, and there are some CSS messages here too. Okay, so that's data specification. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Codes roadmap. So the aim of the codes roadmap is to give a forward view of where change is coming. So it provides what we call buckets that are key areas of strategic change that are going to be focused on over the next 3 years, and shows how changes are mapped into there. So you can access the roadmap from the EMAR. It's in spreadsheet format, so you can click here to download it. And you can find out more about what the roadmap does by accessing the wiki page, which is on the REC portal. So you can click there for that. Then we have release management. So this tab here has every change that has been applied to the REC since version 2.0. So you can scroll down and see if you're interested in when a particular change went into the REC. You can find it on here. You can find the release notes that provide a little bit more detail on what these changes are. And it's not just REC changes listed here. So within the data specification, we do have items that are owned by other codes. For example, this change here is a BSC change. So this has changed one of the data specification elements. And it appears in this log here as a change that we have applied within the EMAR, because the EMAR is host to that data specification catalogue that covers not just REC changes, but other industry code body changes as well. So that's release management. And then we come to Erin. So Erin is the newest addition to the Digital Navigator here, and it uses AI to specifically answer questions on the retail energy code. If I just click here, it gives you some useful tips about asking questions to Erin. So it is using artificial intelligence. So if you can ask it full sentences, or use full sentences rather. If you use language that is REC terminology, it's more likely to recognize that terminology within the source documentation and provide a more accurate answer to you. Please do provide feedback. We're continuously reviewing all the feedback that comes in and refining the model based on that feedback. In terms of don'ts, it can't answer anything not REC related. It doesn't save the answers. So if you want to use an answer, like if you need to copy it before you leave the page, because if you return, it won't remember what you previously asked. And don't include any personal information or company specific details in your questions, because it doesn't have any information on those. And we also have a disclaimer here, so explaining it's a natural language processing tool. It's there to support you navigating the REC, but there are limitations to natural language processing capabilities, so do bear that in mind. And you can see a complete list of all the documents that it searches for its answers here. So it's got all the REC schedules, the service specification, some terms of reference for various groups, performance assurance data, the theft calculators and other such items, service management schedules, and various bits from data specification, and some of the guidance documents as well that are out there. So let's ask Erin a question. Does anyone have a question about the REC they'd like to see answered? No? Okay, I'll make one up. So let's say, what does the say I should do if I lose my feeling? Okay, so if you lose your ceiling pliers, you should report the loss to the relevant authorities and obtain a replacement. And then it gives you Impress Plus here to view. You can download or open the document that it's got this answer from, so that you can. So essentially, it's here to help you navigate those documents and figure out which ones you need to look at to get the answers that you need. The more feedback you give, the more we can improve Erin. So if I put a plus here, it'll like it. If I put a thumb down, it'll give me a box or pop up, and I can put in why I'm not happy with the answer. So I'm going to give that one a plus. Let's ask a question it probably won't know the answer to. Let's say, what are the next effect of lottery results? Oh, there we go. So yeah, it can't tell us what lottery numbers are going to be, unfortunately. So that is the Digital Navigator. Any final questions before I navigate over to IBM Jazz?
Shane put a question in the chat that I assume that he wanted to ask Erin, and that was how to deal with meter technical detail issues for electricity meters.
Oh, so MTD issues. I suspect it may struggle with that one, because it wouldn't know what sort of issues, and the REC legal text might not just call them issues, it might call them erroneous MTDs, things like that. But let's put it in and see what it says. Oh, here we go. No, it has actually got an answer to that. And then you can look at the sources. So it's coming from the metering operation schedule. Is that in line with what you'd be expecting to see? Oh yeah, I saw a thumbs up there. Okay.
Also, we also have a question from Anna, sorry. Yeah. Can it tell you the list of data flows associated with a particular JI item?
Let's have a look. So if we go, does anyone have a J number that they have in mind? Oh, yeah, I need to look one up. I don't know any off the top of my head. So let's go to data specification. Data items. pick one that will be in a few. Do postcode. Oh, that's A. Oh, so you wanted the J. No, so J. No, data items are J. Sorry, Anna, I'm just confusing myself. Where are the J reference numbers? Let's do, okay, maybe. No, do you remember where the J items appear in the data spec? Okay, let's pick a, I'll do an A. Apologies, I can't find it. Oh, here we go, here's a J. Market participant ID. Market. Oh, so it's telling us about the inquiry service and the electricity retail data, but not individual market flow. So I'm going to give it a thumbs down and say I wanted to know which data item is in, and then hit submit, and then that'll go through to our technical team to look at how they could refine what Erin's doing in the back end to give that information there. Any other questions on Erin or the Digital Navigator? No? Okay, then let's head over to IBM Jazz. So I'm going to click this button at the top here. So this is the original EMAR. So it's this off-the-shelf IBM Jazz tool. It's somewhat similar. So you've got your tabs along the top here. You've got, for example, in the schedules, you've got the same groupings. But we're getting a lot of feedback saying it was quite complex. It didn't look that nice, which is why we've developed Digital Navigator so that we're better able to address feedback as it comes in. But there are still some things on this tool that you can't yet do in Digital Navigator. The first one is look at market scenarios. So if I head over to this tab, so market scenario is essentially a process map that shows steps lifted from the code schedules themselves. So if I just zoom out a little, so this is a switch with concurrent change of mem. So what you've got is I can collapse this, you've got the steps in that process. You can see all the different organizations or party types involved. You can see the steps that they take. So it's quite a complex process. So it gives you a visual way of understanding what's happening in that legal text. So you start with a switch initiated by the gaining supplier, then submits a switch request to the CSS provider. So that's step one. And then you can navigate over to the legal text here. If I click on this, it will then take me to that table when it finishes loading. That's it. Oh, here we go. So switch. So there we go. We've got the gaining supplier submitting to the CSS provider. So this table here is the legal text format of that diagram we just saw there. So we are in the process of transferring the market scenarios over to the Digital Navigator. So release date yet to be confirmed, but shortly you'll be able to view those scenarios on the Digital Navigator itself. Another area that we haven't yet transitioned is if I head back to the dashboard here and go to the schedules. When the ComCop was drafted, this is one of the first schedules to be created under the new REC arrangements. And what happened was every clause was allocated a sort of identity as to who that clause applies to. For example, this 8.3.4, in terms of gas responsibility, it applies to AMIs and MEMS. And in terms of work categories for gas meters, it applies to all 4 work categories. So every single clause, except the sort of the initial intro ones, have an identifier against them, which allows us to filter here. So if you are, say, a DNO and you only want to see the clauses that impact DNOs, you can hit this one here, and then only those clauses where electricity responsibility D&O is populated will appear. So that makes it a little bit easier to find what's relevant to you. You can clear it by clicking back on full schedule view, and you get all the information back. So that's the EMAR Digital Navigator element. You can see it's very similar. It's got the code schedules, it's got the hyperlinks that take you through to the definitions, the same format that doesn't look quite as tidy as the Digital Navigator side of things. So that is everything I was going to show you today. So if we move on to questions, I'll start by saying, is there anything you look to do within the schedules, the data specification, anything that you find maybe tricky, anything you'd like to see and drill into?
Ros, there is a question from Paul asking, are the process maps within the Digital Navigator or only able within IBM JazzTab?
Yeah, sorry, Ros. I think you mentioned they're in the process of getting ported over just as I hit enter on that question. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, so we're not quite there yet. We're just the technical team are in the process of creating the environment to host them and moving them over. So I'm not sure when they're going to go live, but yeah, we'll be moving them over shortly.
Fine. It was bad timing on my question. I literally hit enter just as you said it.
And I can see, Paul, you've suggested J0003. Thank you. I didn't spot that at the time. Should we go back to Erin? Let's go back to
a niche subject, personal favourite J items.
I know, I don't have a J item favourite of my own, I'm afraid. Let me go ask Erin.
Hopefully Erin knows that it's an MPAN, so that should be a fun one.
Oh, actually do. If it knows what it is. MPAN core. Also has an alias as well, AMSID. Oh, no, you have to be quite precise with it. I feel like it's in a bit more than that. I'm going to give that a thumbs down and say I don't think this is a complete answer.
Just kind of in the same realm, Ros, Shane's asking the question that, so essentially you mentioned Erin can learn. How long would it take to see the improvement in the answers that Erin can't provide?
I think it depends on what it is. So the technical team review the feedback weekly. Some things are a minor tweak. So I'm just going to give an example. Don't know if it's technically true. So for example, the J items, they might just have to tweak how Erin's reading the source data to make sure it displays the complete list. But having said that, it's also designed not to give ridiculously long answers. So the MPAN list, the MPAN core, probably will appear in a huge number of market messages, and the answer limit's capped at, say, 500 characters, something like that. So they'd have to find a way over that, which might be creating a script behind the scenes that says list the first 10 items and then say and additional items, which you can view by going here. So it really depends on what it is, and other things it's not in the REC, so it's maybe should be in the REC, and maybe a REC change would be needed. So it really does depend on how they can address it as to how quickly it can happen, but it's reviewed weekly, and then there's a sort of log of what's going to be tweaked next, so continuously refining it.
But I think that was the only question in Slido at the minute, and I can't see any in the chat. So
in that case, I'll stop sharing and go back to main slides. There we go. Oh, there we go. Got them on the screen. And I'll hand over to Jenny.
Sorry, I did have technical difficulties there for a second. Let me just bring that up. So that is the end of today's session. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We hope it's been useful. We do ask that you complete a Slido feedback form for us, just to show us what we've been doing well and what we can improve. Yeah, that's everything. Thank you, everyone.